So let's go into how it works. So one of the solutions to showing comments online is to present the conversation as a data visualization as opposed to presenting it as a list. So this is Crowdoscope, and what you're looking at here is a visualization of responses to a multiple choice question, which in this case is, what is your age group? And each of these grey circles represents one of the response options and shows the percentage of people that are in that group. And each of the blue circles represents the participant's comment, and the size of those relates to how the community is rating each of those comments, depending on the evaluation criteria that you're using. So the bigger the comment, the more it resonates with the community. And there are 3 steps to Crowdoscope. The first step is to fill in a very simple survey consisting of one multiple choice question. We call this the grouping question because it determines what group you're going to be in the visualization. And then every Crowdoscope is based around one open-ended question, which in this case is, what do you think is the most important factor for leading a happy life? And that's the question everyone's going to answer, and everyone's going to read other people's responses to that question and then going to rate them. That's step 1, very simple. You can also ask additional multiple choice questions in here if you have a survey that you want to ask. Obviously, we won't get to the stage where people are sticking in 50 Likert scale questions, 100 Likert scale questions, getting back into what we're trying to avoid in the first place, which is just these dead, very long, dull surveys. Okay, in step 2, there's a couple of things going to happen. First of all, it's going to display the responses to the group in question, and then the system is going to select a number of comments, which are these blue circles, for people to rate. Now, the system is selecting these, not in a random way, but it's doing it in such a way that at the end of the completion period, all of the comments have received roughly the same amount of attention. So all the comments are going to be read. Nothing is going to slip through the net. And the number of comments that you show in step 2 is determined by the administrator who's setting it up. In this case, it would be 10. Everyone reads 10 comments. We're going to do a live demo later on. Everyone's going to rate 5 comments. And we use this zooming user interface, a bit like Prezi, where we're going to zoom down into these comments. We're going to read what that person has to say, and then people are going to rate it using these 2 sliders that we have. We call these evaluation criteria. So for this project, the question is, what do you think is the most important factor for leading a happy life? And people are rating this question on how much of a priority is this for leading a happy life, and to what extent is this factor present in your life. But there's an infinite number of evaluation criteria that you can use, and I'll cover some of those as we go through. So that's step 2. In step 3, participants are going to get a control panel, which is going to help them to navigate this conversation in a bit more detail. And I'll talk you through that now as we look through this video. So there's different ways of accessing it, generic link or unique links, answer the grouping question, write a comment to the discussion question, and now we're through to step 2. In this demo, I only kind of showed 3 comments, I think, because it's just, it's just showing you the system. So we zoom down into these comments, read what participant 40 has to say, and then rate it using these 2 evaluation criteria. And some of the evaluation criteria, it depends what you're asking, obviously, in terms of the discussion question, but how much do you agree with this? How much of a priority is this to address? How much does this match your experience? There's an infinite number of questions that you can ask. We're trying to be a bit more sophisticated than a simple like or an upvote button. That's done. We're now through to step 3, so you can put your email if you want, if you're doing generic link. That will send you a link so you can get back in again, see how people are rating your comment. When you're through to step 3, you can then have the ability to reply to other comments, or you can read what people have replied to that comment, and that's stored so you can go back to that later. That's the comment that I made. I can see replies, top-rated comments within the system. We have these auto tags that I can click on any of these tags, and I can read comments about family or about work, and there I can see the comments that I've rated if I want to go back into them. Mobile version, for the 5 or 6 months that we were going without the mobile version, because obviously this came after the desktop version, we're very hard not to have a mobile version in this day and age, but we're very pleased with it. You don't need to download any kind of app. It will just work in your browser. Well, we hope it will work. We'll see later on. And the hook for people to go back is not only to kind of to see how the discussions are progressing, to see new comments, but it's also to get feedback on their suggestions. So here I can see that I've rated 68 comments. I've received 16 ratings. Whatever it was that I said, obviously, didn't resonate with anyone. They think it's a low priority. for leading a happy life, although it's kind of middlingly present. But this is great, you know, particularly for employee research where people tend to be a bit cynical. Lots of people like to have a moan, which is fine. But do people agree with me? You know, I think this about work and the management's terrible and blah, blah, blah. You know, if people agree with me, that's fantastic and that's important for the organisation to know. But then if they disagree with me, then that's important to know as well. But the fact is, unless you have some kind of social collective intelligence system, then you just don't know what people, you know, you're just looking at a comment and you don't have any validation as to whether people agree with this comment or not. So that's how it works. So one of the things that we wanted to be very clear of when we were building the system is that it should have a very easy automated report, because the fact is we're crowdsourcing the text analysis. We're crowdsourcing the devolving responsibility to the text analysis for the participants. So there's automated, there's an analysis and reporting module. We have automated reporting in PowerPoint. So this will spit out some of the background, the project background. I'm particularly interested in the participation metrics at the bottom, because you're not just looking at the response rate, you're also looking at kind of engagement statistics. So what's the average number of ratings given and received per person? What's the average number of replies per comment? How many times have people been in to visit the system? So these are good metrics that you can look at as well, other than just, 50% of people have completed the survey. Standard survey stuff, the grouping questions split by demographics, but one of the automated outputs that we like so much, which is very simple, is just here's all the comments ranked in order of what the community think of them, based on these two evaluation criteria. So in this case, score 1, which was how much of a priority is this for leading a happy life, and score 2, which is to what extent is this factor present in your life. But this is kind of extremely helpful if you're, as a quick way and a valid way of dealing with thousands of comments. Just read the top 50 comments. They've already been shown, they've already been analysed by the community to say these are the top comments that you should read. And we can also group comments up in terms of what people are talking about. And this is very important for looking at how the community is rating certain themes and certain topics. So in this bubble chart, each of these bubbles represents a topic that people are talking about, and the size of the bubble represents how many people are talking about it, which is fine. But if you're just looking at how many people are talking about an issue, you'd think, okay, well, there's a lot of people talking about family, so this is the most important issue, therefore we should, this is what we need to focus on, and we need to look at all the comments on that. But the fact is it's not, because it might not be related to how many people are talking about it, it might be related to how the community is rating it. And that's shown by here. So the bottom, the horizontal axis is how much of a priority is this for leading a happy life, and up the vertical axis we have to what extent is this factor present in your life. So you can see with something like fun, unfortunately, people say that they don't have a lot of fun in their lives. Maybe it's just a particular sample that we went out to. But the thing is, people think fun is very important for leading a happy life. And even more importantly than that, we can then say, okay, well, let's take this topic fun and let's look at that. And I want to look at all the comments about fun, again, ranked in order of what the community think of them. So each time you're kind of delving down, you're not kind of delving down and thinking, oh, let's go and commission some focus groups to find out more about this issue. You may well want to do that, but you can look down within topics and look at the top comments within particular areas. And we're also able to produce some kind of outputs which are a bit like social network analysis. You can look at how these groups are rating each other's comments. So if you're grouping people by, say, a particular business unit or function, this might be very revealing to look at how the groups rate each other's ideas. People in HR think that people in finance's ideas are terrible, but it's not right the other way around. I just made that up. It probably is the case, though. So you can see here that people who are 65 or older, they rate people who are in the bottom left. People who are under 29, they rate their ideas very highly. Okay. I mean, this isn't a huge sample size, so I'd take that with a pinch of salt, but just to illustrate the point. So how... let's look at how companies are using this. I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail because we're having some case studies, so we can pick up on this later. But we made the system very easy to use. It's a self-organising system, so you don't need any kind of facilitation, which is fantastic because you can just set it up. It's very quick to set up. And then just let it go. It takes care of itself. It's easy to launch and moderate, and we had automated reporting. This is the admin panel where you go and set them up. But just look how little you need to actually set one of these up. You don't, put in your questions, discussion question, evaluation question, and you're off. This is the reporting module. You can analyse, you can filter, but the best thing is that you can export these to PowerPoint or to Excel, and it'll give you a pre-formatted report which is similar to the one which I just showed you. And in terms of how companies are using it, I mean, this goes back to the name Vis Survey, and I'm glad we didn't call it Vis Survey, because people are using it for surveys, and they do call it a survey, but there's a lot of companies that use it who don't call it a survey, and they'll call it a discussion, or they'll call it an online focus group. You know, it depends how you want to position it. So companies are using it in place of surveys, group discussions, brainstorming and innovation, particularly at the start. I mean, there's lots of innovation tools. You know, this isn't like an innovation pipeline or a funnel, but in terms of, you know, getting the views of lots of people about where to innovate or suggesting ideas or solutions for particular problems at the start of an innovation process is very useful. At conferences and events, as we'll see later on, you know, this goes back to conferences at the moment, conference apps, they all have this polling, but it's the same issue. It's like, you know, it's just 25% of people think this, 50% of people think this. We're trying to do something that's a bit more sophisticated than that. Action planning, I mean, only because we've set off in this way. Action planning in response to big surveys, I think, is something that it does very well and very quickly. You know, you've done this big survey, it's given you some very vague and spurious outcomes you don't know what to do with. Rather than go and have to do some interviews and focus groups, you can quickly set up a Crowdoscope and get solutions to particular problems or even diagnose this particular issues even further. Predictions and forecasting, in terms of getting groups of experts together, asking them for their predictions. You can get people to rate these on how likely is this to happen, how much impact is this going to have, can be very useful. And we've actually done one, I think, with a leader for personal feedback. Multi-source feedback, 360, like an open 360. I wouldn't like to be the subject of that because everyone can see what feedback people are giving you, but then it's very fair as well, because if, you know, you're doing a 360 and someone's written something that I think is unfair, hang on a minute, that's really unfair. Do the other people who are giving you feedback agree with that person? Because if they don't, then it's just something to do with that person. So it's, you know, it is very open, but it's also very fair. And there's lots of examples. I'm not going to kind of drill into these. Part of the problem is that when you kind of show screenshots and talk about projects, you have to give away some of the data as well, which companies don't particularly like. But, you know, I like the visualization aspect of it because it gives you something tangible. And you'll hear about some case studies as we go through the afternoon anyway.